Morning, folks. It's 4:52 in the morning, West Coast time. It's the 3rd of May, 2024. And we were John C. of Roseman, California, trying to figure things out this morning. I should have came across this video while it was aired yesterday, because this one would have really set me on my ears. We'll get the CNN link on this one and hook it into my description when I get this, because I think democracy has a major issue and contentions, even in the so-called democratic free zone of ourselves, that I think we are losing our own identity as democracy. And that's got me concerned. At one time I had an argument, I don't know if it was a test or an actual argument, with a political science professor back at the college I'm still attending, Antelope Valley College. A very popular professor he was. I don't know if he's still there or not. I hadn't checked the boards yet. I hope he's still there, but maybe he's close to retirement. I hope not, because he still has knowledge about things. Or maybe he's got as far as he can. And I'm wondering how he really feels about how democracy is being attacked left and right. He was trying to teach us the political landscape. Originally lay the groundwork of what politics is all about, and then how it affects everybody, from the individual to the governments, and how the governments affect the people, how the people affect the governments, and so forth. Kind of a tit for tat. We want a democracy. We don't even understand what the concept is unless we understand about giving up power to some people who are going to be ruling over us, either for the good or for the bad. Democracy laid out by Aristotle in his works. And he's written a lot of works concerning about it. Most of it, actually all of it, is pretty much downloadable and free for people to look and read. Project Gutenberg's got the information on there. I think the internet.org's also got it too. There's a lot of basis concerning about it. And this is one of the things that we were supposed to be looking at to understand the basis of it, how our system works. There was also a textbook. I wish I had kept my textbook, but for the most part, that generalized information is still out there too, called We the People. And I was giving a brief history concerning about the United States. We need to learn about history because it has a direct way of affecting our politics, and politics has a direct way of affecting our history. They both go together. It's like peanut butter and jelly, or peanut butter and chocolate. It's not an acquired taste, it's a delicious taste. It's not as plain as vanilla, it's more diverse, like Neapolitan ice cream. It's not just the taste of it, it's understanding the principles and the dynamics of it. Federalist Papers, the basic engines and the ideas and idealisms written by the forefathers of the Constitution of the United States. Second here. I'm just trying to get my system up and operating here. I think this would have been upsetting my professor, that if I couldn't name them off the top of my head, maybe I didn't do a good job in political science at this point. I mean, after all, Hamilton was writing a lot of information out there. And because of these papers of Hamilton, the problem is when you want to keep your name quiet. He had to use pseudonyms to make sure that people didn't realize what was going on. That's why the paperwork, the Federalist paperwork, was under different names to prevent the real authors from basically getting themselves reamed. And even these things are available on the archives.org or even several other websites out there that they're very important. They're even in the book of We the People. Federalist Papers, I still had to keep ownership of my own records. But I understand this, that these were the groundwork. These were laying the groundworks of all of our governmental policies and what we're dealing with in the U.S. Constitution, but originally screwed it up in the first federal papers that we actually had to sign to make sure that states actually had more power than the federal government did. Articles of Confederation. That sucked because right after the Revolutionary War, America was so deep in debt that bankers were collecting on everything and on everybody, throwing people in jail. That landholders became indentured servants. They didn't want to do that. They didn't want to lose their home and livelihood or anything else. They threw their lives into the Revolutionary War to gain freedom from Britain. But now they're enslaved or indentured or even worse off in prison because of the bankers on land and across the seas would own property. They'd be collecting on the debt immediately right after the war. And they knew that after America had won a principal major battle after several years, they're going to be beholden to somebody else. Originally, there was a draft being passed around, the Articles of Confederation, to give more power to the states to regulate themselves, but not when it came down for the national debt. Not when it came down for the national debt. Keep this in mind. This information is handy because we're dealing with the same situation here. Only the debt is in political street creds, not actual U.S. dollars right now. True, we are in debt right now. We've had political administrations that they're screwing us over one way or another. We're indebted a great deal more than what we should have. We should have been producing profits, but we didn't. We're in the red, so to speak. We got red all over the place, including the books. So if we actually had anybody else trying to collect on our debts, they probably could. It was even feeling the same fear from everybody else back in those days when the country was just barely understanding what it was. We had principles written out of how a federal government should be running. You ever heard of power of consent? People had to give the power, their own power, to a government system to be governed. To be governed over, hopefully wisely. If you wanted a country, if you wanted the states run, you had to consent. Otherwise, sometimes it wouldn't work that way. Did you want Great Britain to rule you for the rest of your life? For the rest of the country's existence? Well, I'm sorry, there won't be a country. It's only territories that will be bleeding you dry. You think you're in debt right now? Well, you're second class to zero class citizens because you had no representation on the motherland. Even when you were on the mother island of England, you had no representation for being a lowlife. You weren't wealthy and privileged. Even wealthy and privileged would have the honor of being ruled by a benevolent king. He wanted more power for himself. Didn't you understand that? Yeah, I understand it. I understand a dictator when I see one and hear one. There was a little bit of a clip from the Patriot movie. Mel Gibson's version of the Patriot. And sometimes I remember some movies if I have to watch it again and again and remember what they were saying, but sometimes you just had to hear some of it. So forgive me. Um, but I was trying to find out. 1 second. Pause. I'm grateful for the internet. Would you please tell me, Mr. Howard, why should I trade one tyrant 3,000 miles away for 3,000 tyrants 1 mile away? An elected legislature can trample a man's rights just as easily as a king can. Hold that thought. Hold that thought. In Hungary, you have a supposed elected ruler that's holding his country in an authoritative regime style, but still considered a democracy, where freedom of press is controlled by Orban, where elections are controlled by Orban, where apparently the government is controlled by Orban. Henceforth, any elected body or legislative or judicial system is controlled by Orban, the authoritative ruler in Hungary. And the people have voted him in because there are no elected leaders strong enough to handle him, or if they are, they're taken out one way or another, politically. But Orban is it. And he controls everything. But it's supposed to be a democracy because they elected him into office. Then there's Russia. Vladimir Putin, the leader. Constantly elected in for several more terms each time, murdering his opponents left and right. And yet my political science professor back at the college would say that these guys are legitimate because they are elected, because there are votes. When you're voting at a bully constantly and the bully's taking out the opposition, it's still considered democracy because the people have voted. Forced votes, but votes nevertheless. Of course, the countries in Colombia was also forced votes. Venezuela, democracy had failed. And you had strongman Noriega, Panama. Of course, if you want to consider North Korea democracy, they keep voting in the guy and his regime all the damn time. And then there's China, who claim they've got also voting rights, but they don't do democracy. They keep their political party, but they love their capitalism. There's nothing true about democracy. They say democracy is where you're voting your power to have someone else rule or ruin your life. Where we can have legislation would possibly have authority over a king, if possible. But in England, there was supposed to be democracy a bit, but not really. Because you had an authoritative crown for centuries. Fought over, bled over, died over. So what was it, about 16 or 1700s when they actually had a parliament system opening up for both the House of Lords and the House of Commons. Commons would be like the landlords and people below. But they really didn't have that much representation in there. But if you didn't have any representation, power at all, you were nothing. Basically, if you were just a lowlife and you didn't have anybody representing you, you were a lowlife. But you would have a parliament system. You would have groups of people in a different political system going after each other, trying to get the coveted crown of the prime minister. But the prime minister, would he be effectual or not, since you had an actual king? But you had the parliamentary system of the House of Lords, would represent the landlords and the knights and the earls and everybody else of royal title would be representing them. The money in the House of Commons would just be nothing. Oh, they still have some voting action, but if you're not represented in there, you're still nothing anyway. The colonies were considered nothing because we were only considered a money pot. We're supposed to be sending all the materials back from there to England. If you wanted true English materials built in England, you would have to pay a hefty sum. What happens if you didn't have the hefty sum? Well, we didn't exactly have a debtor's prison in the colonies, but we did have debtor's prisons in the mother country of England during those days of the colonials between, I think, 15 to 1700. That being said, the people in the colonies were getting pissed off enough. I didn't want this lack of representation. They wanted to be represented. You can't tax me because I'm an American. No, I'm a colony. I'm a colony. I'm the guy on the other side of the pond here. You can't tax me. I need representation of my government to tell you that this is unfair. We haven't got that much money coming out of us. But you want more money? Yes, because me as England here, I've fought many wars against France and Spain, and maybe German too, or somebody else. But it doesn't matter, I need the money. I need to fill up my coffers, and you will do it for me. Because I say so, because I am your king. You love me. And you have no choice because I have a garrison over there too. Just to make sure you conform and comply. I'd like to have that kind of smile at you. So yeah, trying to keep up with history these days, back then and now. Seeing how things are relevant. Seeing how things are boomeranging at each other people. Karma has a way of striking back at our own damn ignorance. We think we are intelligent? Bullshit. We're not. If we were, we'd wake up to the fact that sometimes democracy is the most dangerous damn thing in the world. We want an autocratic society to run and rule and give us fear instead of hope. We want fear governing us. Look at our own empathetic country of Germany. I say these things facetiously. Yeah, I raised up the country of Germany back in the 30s and 40s. It became holy terror. After getting their ass kicked in the First World War, they weren't ready for it. But dealing with a fear-mongering little psychopath, he goes out there and tries to rule the world. Worse than Napoleon. Worse than Genghis Khan. But he wasn't quite up there regarding the Russian Empire, was he? Oh no. Russians got rid of their governing people. Put up their own government. How to screw the people even worse. See, it helps to try to put things together when you're looking at all the historical situations happening. Trying to do a deep dive. Sometimes it's so damn complicated, even I'm having a hard time trying to pull it out. Trying to pull out an image that people can try to figure out left and right because history keeps changing itself. Not the definitions and not the interpretations. It's sometimes the dynamics of history scares the hell out of me that I'm wondering whether or not we're going to be history as a country because of all the dynamics we're pulling on each other. We're thinking that we want this version of our own democracy while we're losing it left and right. Democracy is supposed to be the hardest damn thing for us to understand and deal with. Yet the most easily corruptible entity, according to Aristotle. If I remembered some of his information. That's what scares the hell out of me sometimes, because some of that information is deep. And yet we try to teach it to our children, trying to be less complicated. We want them to have freedom to vote their own choice. But then again, freedom usually costs, not just in bloodshed, also in political currency, but also in ignorance and understanding. If you truly understand what democracy is supposed to be, then you're going to be seeing democracy happening, and it'll scare the crap out of you. The power to vote, the power to change lives in your hand. Whether you want a dictator or you want an old fart in this particular political current election cycle we've got coming up in several months. Do you want a guy who's been in the Congress, who's been in the politics for a long time, or do you want a dictating con artist who's truly won a lot of people because they were too damn stupid not to learn any damn thing about how to give away their power to other people? A library would have been able to enlighten them if they could read, if they could understand. A simple library. Oh, I'm sorry, libraries are for wokeism. Libraries are for liberalism. You can't learn in a library, you're not allowed. But we have this wonderful candidate over here that's going to save your ass for one way or another. And he wants to turn United States, this one candidate, into Hungary, part two. Or even Russia. Or even both. He tried that in the first term of his office. What the hell happened? The first two, let me try to rephrase that one there. When he won office back in the old orange gas bag won his term, and then the first term of Congress, we had Republicans turning Trumplican fans into Trumplican fans. But they didn't run the country. They were trying to run their own damn agendas. Hence, the quotation. Would you please tell me, Mr. Howard, why should I trade one tyrant 3,000 miles away for 3,000 tyrants 1 mile away? An elected legislature can trample a man's rights just as easily as a king can, or a president, or both. I've added additional lines to that one. Understand if we actually get a Trumplican in office, doesn't matter which form or format, he will bend or she will bend towards the will of others outside our country to be just like them. Not like what we were supposed to be. We're supposed to value pluralism. Well, apparently we don't. We're supposed to value value of a human being. Well, define a human being. We even had a legislature going through regarding anti-Semitism, and yet there are some people who have actually raised a pretty damn decent point, even if I can't stand them or their damn politics, concerning about the freedom of speech. And this surely pisses me off. This surely pisses me off. Because I'm seeing the freedom of speech being interfered with left and right. Despite the fact we had quote-unquote good intentions on this one here to label what is considered anti-Semitism. Some people consider it as an attack on Israel. It's not an attack on Israel. It's an attack on a faith, a belief, a thought pattern, of something. That's what it is. That's what it is. For me, right